Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 1st of October 2024. And I have the audio sorted out, so sorry about the last video. Oops, that was stupid technology doing stupid things. Anyway, here we are going to start with this form of, was it Nosferatu? What's going on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. Switching to Ukraine, if I may. You guys put out a joint statement on Ukraine.
Oh yeah, that's it. This vampiric human being has said that they have, well, the US is reiterating that Ukraine does not need our permission to strike back against Russian targets. Why are you not letting them then? And here's the answer.
To strike back.
So I don't have anything to expand on the statement that we put out. But of course, first of all, Ukraine does not need our permission to strike back against Russian targets. They're a sovereign country and can use the weapons that they build on their own, of which are many. If you look at the programs that they have put in place over the last year.
In other words, they can't use US weapons. We're not stopping them striking. They can go and strike whatever they like. They just can't do it with our stuff.
And then when you look at the weapons that we have provided to them, we've made clear that they can use them to strike back against Russian targets across the border that are launching attacks. So Ukraine does have an enormous amount of material to defend itself. We always look at whether there are additional tools that we can provide them. If you notice the announcement that the president made on Thursday, we are providing them an additional $8 billion in security assistance, and we will continue to support them.
If you're okay with Ukraine's striking back, then why not letting them strike back with your weapons?
So, Alex, first of all, I'm just going to say again that you and I have had this conversation before about other weapon systems or tactics that you presented to me as the one magic capability that would change the face of the conflict. And I think I have always made clear that that is not how we see it, that we look at all of the capabilities and all the tactics and all the support that we provide Ukraine in totality, and look at how, when we approve any new weapon system or any new tactic, we look at how it's going to affect the entire battlefield and Ukraine's entire strategy, and that's what we'll continue to do.
I'm following last week's...
Yeah, I just don't think it's good enough. Anyway, Washington Post has produced a good article. Euromaidan Press references it here. Ukraine aid funds, the Ukraine aid funds fuel job growth in American defense sector. So the aid boosts defense production in Pennsylvania, Alabama, and Texas, increasing artillery, armored carriers, and rocket system output, while creating jobs and revitalizing local industries. So we're going to pop into this Washington Post article. Null report says US government contracts for supplying weapons to Ukraine are helping sustain the economies of small American towns. The Pentagon allocates significant funds for weapons purchases from companies located in these towns. While a small portion of the funds has gone to Ukraine, the majority remains in the US, supporting local economies. It's really important to go through this because right now, the internet, the socials, Twitter is absolutely rammed full of raging idiots, right? People like Cat Turd, who's like one of Elon Musk's favoured sources. Just the idea, this kind of meme, no money for you. You know, the idea is this is Kamala Harris looking at a flooded area, saying no money for you. We gave it all to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And this is a really common sort of meme. Here, someone, Amy Kramer, whatever, someone says East Tennessee, someone call Ukraine and ask for a refund so we can rebuild America as the floodwaters wash a bridge away. And thankfully, there's some community notes here. Nearly all of US aid given to Ukraine is in the form of weapons and equipment already in the US stockpile. The money is used to build replacement equipment within the United States. This has nothing to do with FEMA. It's not the same income strain, and you can't use that equipment. Like the money for Bradley's to go at the Bradley's been bought and paid for. It's a book value. I've explained this a million times, but my goodness, the internet is rife with misinformation and disinformation, and people are absolutely politicizing the hurricane. In fact, Donald Trump is disgustingly politicizing it, I have to add, with some of the things he said which are outright false. To talk about Starlink and Elon Musk, and he's going to get, they've already been provided, they've been bought and paid for by FEMA. Joe Biden released the funds and released FEMA ahead of the hurricane hitting because he proactively knew, or his team proactively knew, that the assistance was going to be needed. They're waiting for floods to subside to get to certain areas. Things are happening, and the money has been given, and the permissions and everything's been given by Biden and Kamala Harris, who are staying out of visiting there so they don't get in the way. If you saw a crowd that was waiting for Donald Trump in Georgia, you're like, that crowd, these same people are complaining, oh, you should be here helping. Well, you should be helping rather than standing around waving Trump. If you that's really what's important to you, you've got a couple of thousand people standing around waving Trump placards. You go and frickin' help. So it really annoys me that Ukraine is being used as a political football here. And indeed, the hurricane is being used as a political football. And I find it really distasteful. And at the end of the day, Ukraine gets unfortunately the raw end of the stick here. As Eli says, I'll personally advocate for a refund if anyone can explain how Abrams tanks, ATACMS and HIMARS can be efficiently used in this situation. Sure, let's use a HIMARS on Georgia to help in the flood. So just be warned, and I know that there might still be some Republicans out there following my channel, but if you are, just be careful not to get involved in that, or at least to correct people when they make these really problematic claims and politicize what is a horrific natural event. So anyway, the Washington Post article, Ukraine's artillery is helping boost Scranton's economy. I'm going to actually read most of this. So Scranton, Pennsylvania, just because it gives you a nice bit of context. Before the artillery shells reach Ukrainian troops on the front lines in their war with Russia, they're an economic boon in northeastern Pennsylvania. Since Russia began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the federal government has allocated nearly $175 billion in emergency assistance for the conflict. We can argue about that number, etc., etc. But much of that money remains in the United States. It plows plants like the Army's factory in Scranton, which makes 155mm artillery rounds, and others in Alabama, which make armored personnel carriers, and Texas, where mobile artillery rocket systems are built. General Dynamics, a contractor that runs the 116-year-old Scranton Army ammunition plant, and has added more than 200 jobs in this region since 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine. Artillery production more than doubled, and the General Dynamics facilities in this region produce more than a third of the 155mm rounds that the US aims to send to the front lines each month. Gentex, a military contractor in nearby Carbondale, Pennsylvania, increased staffing by 10% over the past year, officials say. German glass firm Schott, who makes high-tech optical products for civilian and military uses in Duryea, Pennsylvania, boosted employment by dozens of jobs over the past 5 years. Those jobs are helping to reverse the area's economic slide. For decades after coal mines and textile mills closed down, the unemployment rate here was at least 2 percentage points higher than the national average, said Satyajit Ghosh, a professor at the University of Scranton who studies the regional economy. Now it's often better than the national metrics, as the regional has diversified into healthcare, education and logistics, and begins what locals hope will be a manufacturing resurgence. Quote, "This is not a fluke," Ghosh said. "If you use unemployment rate as a marker, this would be the best I have seen, or that anyone has seen." Rounds made in Scranton next go to Iowa, where they are fitted with explosives and fuses before they're ready for Ukraine or NATO's allies. And then you get some description of the pushback from Republicans on this, but from the later in the article, but Biden and the Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell from Kentucky have countered that spending for Ukraine's defense is in both the security and economic interests for the United States. So this is just basic economic stimulus. Representative Matt Cartwright, Democrat, one of Washington's strongest Ukraine supporters, who is locked in a tight re-election race to represent Scranton and surrounding counties, said he expects Ukraine may need more funding soon during Congress's lame duck session after November's elections. Northeastern Pennsylvania hopes to prove the premise that aid for Ukraine matters just as much as the local economies that manufacture the material, said Scranton Mayor Paige Gebhardt Cognetti, a Democrat elected in 2019. Job openings are drawing people to Scranton. With a population of around 77,000, it anchors a growing region of more than 500,000 people. The city is desperate for nurses, said Bob Durkin, president of the local Chamber of Commerce. With the rapid expansion of the universities and hospitals, electrical workers are in demand to wire the buildings. Plenty of retail jobs need filling, Ghosh said. Of course, this is money multiplier. So when you invest in economies in a local area, that money gets multiplied, and if you're going to expand that factory, then you need electricians to do that expansion, you need a plasterer to do that, you need people to work on the capital of the the machinery in that factory, and then you get workers in and they need their lunches, so they go to a cafe or they get a sandwich people in, and then you need fuel, and then you need this, and that money that you spend on expanding that factory gets spent locally in the economy. And then you need, extra nurses, and then you need more teachers. And you're just attracting jobs. It attracts all other jobs, and it becomes this virtuous cycle. That is what economic stimulus can do. And that is apparently what is happening here in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So the idea that you are just sending a suitcase load of dollars across to to Ukraine for Zelensky to spank on a super yacht for his wife is absolutely insane. It's just not what is happening. Large proportion of the Ukraine funding is going towards stimulating the US economy. So anyway, to continue, plenty of retail jobs need filling, Ghosh said. What northeastern Pennsylvania lacks, officials say, are highly skilled professional workers who can teach at the universities or the new medical college, engineer new glass products, or write the software that integrates military helmets and armoured vehicles. Part of the solution is attracting workers from big cities, officials say. Michael Turek, Gentex's chief operating officer, commutes to Carbondale a few days a week from a Philadelphia suburb, but officials hope that more than that the opportunities can persuade young professionals and new college graduates to stay in Scranton or come back to the region, Lackawanna County Commissioner Matt McGloin said. So it's about, this virtuous cycle of attracting more and more. And there's lots of talk about this, lots of history in this article about Scranton, etc., etc. We're going to join it further on. The Army has invested nearly $420 million to modernise the place. It captures thousands of gallons of rainwater to cool the machines. On a recent visit, technicians were replacing decades-old production lines with faster, quieter, energy-efficient machines. Investment, right? And that money is multiplied as those people fitting that are in gainful employment, and etc., etc. At Gentex, workers manufacture helmets on the same wooden floors where silk spinning machines once stood. One level above them, a sprawling atrium displays nearly a dozen generations of the firm's helmets for tank gunners, ground forces, the Navy and Air Force pilots. A highlight reel that could have been spliced from an action movie shows GIs soaring on fighter jets, then breaching doorways and clearing buildings. Quote, when you look at a site like this, what people don't always realise is they think manufacturing. We think high tech, said Christopher Cassidy, president of the SHOT's North American operations. So this is all these different companies we're talking about here, not just the ammunition plant. For Biden, who lived in Scranton until he was 10 years old, defence manufacturing is both a boon for Ukraine and a balm for long ago economic decay. Quote, think what happens when a factory closes in Scranton or anywhere around the country. When the school is underfunded, when inequity grows larger and larger, it puts the middle class further out of reach and rips the dignity and pride and hope out of communities all across the country, including right here in Pennsylvania, the president said during a speech in the area in April. But that view, some locals say, is based on a Scranton that hasn't existed in decades. Industries have changed. The region now prides itself on its eds and meds rather than its goods-producing heritage. The people have changed. The city is now more diverse than it was 2 generations ago. Scranton's Hispanic population has increased dramatically from just over 1,000 in 1970 to 12,000, more than 15% of the population in 2020, according to the Census Bureau data. Many of those changes are positive, local officials say. Quality of living is better. For years, small fires burned below ground in old coal mines. Durkin from the Chamber of Commerce grew up playing in his neighbourhood at the foot of a slag heap, a mountain of discarded stones and soil from dug-out mines. Those dangers are gone now. The jobs are mostly safer. Still, decades of deindustrialization here and throughout what Cognetti, the mayor, calls legacy cities, she despises the term Rust Belts, have an enduring legacy. Is more manufacturing a throwback to Scranton's past or an effective salve? quote, to the extent that we can still have things made in America, made in northeastern Pennsylvania, made in Scranton, people want that. People want those jobs. They want that ability to make something with their hands, she said. There's a sense that it's a career opportunity, it's an economic opportunity, and it's a source of pride for us here. Absolutely brilliant. A really nice insight into the effect that helping Ukraine can have on helping the US. This is not just about a free lunch. It's not a free lunch. I keep telling you this. It is not some kind of charity exercise for Ukraine. This is about investing in Ukraine as a form of investing in the US, both strategically and economically. You're not helping Ukraine because it's just a nice thing to do. It is to the strategic benefit of the US so to do. And speaking of which, continuing that strain of thoughts, No reports that the US has signed a $6.9 billion contract with Boeing for the production of small diameter bombs, as announced by the Pentagon. The bombs will be supplied to Japan, Bulgaria and Ukraine. So those first two will be sold, no doubt, to Japan and Bulgaria. So it's not like that contract, that is an investment to make, to sell these things, one presumes. But also to get them to Ukraine. I don't know whether that's selling them or giving them as part of an aid package. Contract is expected to be completed by December 31st, 2035, right? So this is a massive long-term contract. However, these small diameter bombs have been used effectively. There are guided glide bombs being used in Ukraine. You've got the GBU ones, you've got the JDAMs that have been used, although to differing degrees of success due to electronic warfare and whatnot. So anyway, good news there. Lithuania is to hand over camouflage nets found in parcels to Russia, and they're going to hand them over to Ukraine. So the customs service in Lithuania has intercepted multiple shipments of camouflage nets on trains from Kaliningrad, raising suspicions about their intended use in Ukraine. Kaliningrad is that exclave that sits outside of Russia, surrounded by Europe, essentially on the Baltic Sea. And I presume they are checking out these trains and seeing that actually they are trying to deliver military equipment, in this case camouflage netting, back to Russia through these European nations. And Lithuania, for example, is saying that we ain't having that. That's we're going to take that, and actually we're going to give that to Ukraine. What are you going to do about it? So interesting. Now, on the Russian front, we have a video of a Russian military testing of FPV drones. These are being sent from helicopters to deal with naval drones in the Black Sea. So interesting that the Russians are using drones from a helicopter. It's not something I've seen before, where the drone operators are safe inside the helicopter, then they release the drones out into the air, into the air above the Black Sea, and then they go and hunt for Magura V5 naval drones or similar. And there you go. So that is what the Russians are doing, as according to that video. Don't know if that one actually comes across a naval drone or not, which just gives you an example of its flight. And then finally, we'll go to this on the same kind of subject. Apparently, according to Samuel Bender, who's a bit of a drones expert, several Russian USV, unmanned surface vehicles, so sea drones, developers have agreed to mass produce combat and military USVs at the Kingsiep machine building plant, KMZ, military industrial holding company, starting in 2025. So they are possibly a little bit slow to this, but they are going to be mass producing naval drones, sea drones, maritime drones, like the Ukrainians have been. And I wonder whether that is going to signify an escalation in attacks on places like Odessa, places like the Danube River, Izmail, and whatnot, ports along the Romanian-Ukrainian border there. So that's bad news, I guess, for the Ukrainians there. Quite surprising it's taken so long, though. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully that's of use, of interest. Please just try and fight disinformation where you can. There'd be a lot of political capital to be made of the natural disaster in the US with Hurricane Helene. Just make sure you're putting people straight if they are giving those sorts of opinions, if you can. Take care, guys. Speak soon.